Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Group Captain Joe Elkington. We warmly welcome the family of Private John Henry Elliott, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Please sit if you wish to do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the hearts of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private John Henry Elliott. John Elliott was born in 1886 in Exeter, New South Wales, to Alexander and Mary Elliott. He was the third of 12 children, 7 boys and 5 girls born to the couple. John attended Exeter State School before the Elliott family moved to a dairy farm at Numulgee near Lismore. Here, John and several of his brothers worked with their father on the farm. Following the outbreak of the First World War, John Elliott and his younger brother Frank enlisted for service in the Australian Imperial Force at Lismore on the 13th of May 1916. The brothers were transferred to Brisbane, where after initial training they were allocated to the 16th Reinforcements to the 25th Battalion. John and Frank embarked from Brisbane on 21 October aboard the transport ship Boona, bound for England. Their older brother William enlisted at the end of October, joining the 52nd Battalion. The 25th Battalion was in the 2nd Division's first wave during the attack on Menin Road on the 20th of September. Both brothers were wounded during the day. John received shrapnel wounds to both hands and one of his legs. His wounds were superficial and returned to the battalion 2 days later. Frank was wounded in the foot and was evacuated to England. John next participated in the successful attack on the Boon Sender in early October, where he was again wounded, this time receiving shrapnel wounds to his head, shoulder and upper chest. He was evacuated to England for surgery and convalescence. Here he was able to catch up with Frank, who was again back in England after returning to France, being wounded for a second time. John returned to France in late March, only days before the Germans launched their spring offensive. Throughout April, the 25th Battalion played its part in halting the German advance. John's brother William was killed on the 24th of April during the Australian attack to dislodge the Australians from Villiers-Bretonneux, and was buried in the nearby Adelaide Cemetery. On the night of the 10th of June, the 25th Battalion began their attack on Morlancourt. Not long after the hopover, a German shell landed among A Company, killing 2 men outright and wounding several more, including John Elliott, who lost both legs below the knees. One witness recalled that, despite his terrible wounds, he remained cheerful. He was carried back to the 5th Australian Field Ambulance, where he died in the early hours on the 11th of June. John Elliott was laid to rest in the Keeroo British Cemetery. He was 32 years old. His brother Frank did not return to France. His second wound caused him to be medically downgraded, and he sailed for Australia in December. John Elliott's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private John Henry Elliott, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we- We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you all a very good evening.